everyone. Amanda here. 2 Facebook Lives this week. How exciting for you. The reason why I wanted to come on today is that I have the one and only astrologer, Sharita Star, on. You can say hello to her. Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
If you are in the Mindful Living group, you have seen her talk in there and talk about upcoming things. This is actually going to be for the podcast. So if you're hearing it here today, you're hearing it here first. It will actually not be up on the podcast until next Wednesday. So it's like you're getting the secret squirrel version. So I hopefully they feel special. But you can, you're going to have to stare at me. Sorry, I may move it around a little bit, but you will be able to hear her, which is the most important part. So welcome to the show, Sharita.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Obviously you and I are friends. We've known each other a long time. I used to stalk Sharita online and finally got the balls up to ask her on the show 3 or 4 years ago. I can't even remember. It's been a while now. And she and I became fast friends. We've known each other for a while now, talk all the time. But the audience that's listening today, they may not know who you are. They may be new to you. So before we dive into this turbulent retrograde that's coming up, tell us how you got into astrology and how you became known as Sharita Star, the astrologer.
Well, that's a long story, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. I've read the horoscope since I was 7, or I was gravitated to it on some level, and oddly because it was right next to the funnies in the newspaper, so that was just something I oddly started doing, thought nothing of it. And then in astrology, there are all kinds of different cycles. Of course, we're going to be talking about a big one this summer called a whole bunch of overlapping retrogrades. But there was a cycle in my life that was going on called my Saturn return. And I happen to have Saturn in my natal chart placed in my house of career. So it was during that time, which was 28, 29 years of age, that this all just started to come out of me like a sieve, I don't know, or like a faucet turned on, the light switch went on. And so it was a book that I had read called Star Signs by Linda Goodman. That was this at the same time in my life. And she's the one really who I consider my mentor, my source of inspiration for being on this journey. And she's the one who explains astrology and numerology, number one, are inseparable because they're guided by the same planets. So she covers to extensive detail how that works in star signs. And reading that book is what, like a switch went off, and she says, don't believe what I say, just, start to apply it. And I started to realize I never forgot anybody's birthday. When I started kind of doing this, I started thinking about people I knew, and I was like, oh yeah, their birthday's this, their birthday's that. And I took her information and I was like, wow, this is fascinating. This totally describes this person. It's like, that's exactly what they do and how they are and so on and so forth, or what they do for a living. And it was it. It was like somebody hit me over the head with a 2x4 at the time. And I just, about 3 years later, I was, doing readings, and then a website came along and a book, and here we are, just still doing what we do.
I love that, though. I love that it was your Saturn return that kind of woke you up, so to speak, and got you into it. I think that for those that are listening, your Saturn return is like a lot of upheaval, and it's like destruction and rebirth and kind of the rising phoenix from the dust, so to speak. And would you say,
especially if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing? And of course, because I was a theater major in college, I kept working in restaurants because, every aspiring actress works at a restaurant or something like that. And oh my God, if I could tell you how many restaurant jobs I was actually fired from in my 20s, you would laugh. And but at the time, this all came about, and it was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And that was because Saturn was aligning with my natal in the house of career, and boom, and that's what started happening. So
And
I
that's the
haven't
whole point.
done the restaurant work in a long time, thankfully.
But isn't that the whole point of a Saturn return, is to really like help you get back on track?
Well, what it does as well is, like, people and especially I think more so America, I don't, and I think it's over the world too, but people are so conditioned to think, oh, I graduate high school, I go get a 4-year degree, maybe I pursue a master's, and then, oh, I know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. But you're still in like your early 20s at that time, and you're still going through your own sense of, self-discovery, figuring out who you are. And you do that all the way through that first Saturn return, which won't complete until you're 28 to 30 years of age. So for people to think that they know it all about their life in their early 20s, they're sadly mistaken. So you have to kind of wait. So whatever you've acquired up until that 28 to 30 years of age, if it's not meant to sit with you for the remainder of your life or to keep evolving with you, that Saturn return becomes that destruction, and it'll plummet you into rebirth, because you've got to get rid of the stuff that doesn't work for you.
Trim away that fat.
Trim away your fat, throw out your garbage, delete your files, the old ones you don't need, and step into who you really are. And numerology too, when you assess, how to read numerology charts, your break between your first and second period cycles, depending on your life path number, will often coincide with that Saturn returns. For some people, it happens a little earlier. Some people are a little later. But, that heading into your late 20s, early 30s, there's always these moments of very pivotal things happening. Mm-hmm. So in combination with looking at both sides of the coin from the astrology and the numerology side of things, if you're not doing what you're supposed to, you're going to hit resistance.
You're going to get shook up so that you get on the right track, is what's going to happen.
Which you don't want to do as much as possible, because that's futile. We all know that, but we try.
So what I think is so curious about astrology is this idea that, I'll be going through an experience, or, I'll be in a down period, or a real strong upswing, and I'll think like, oh my God, I'm the brilliant one that came up with this. And you'll be like, oh no, honey, it's in the stars.
Well, no, but what's the brilliant thing is that you're listening, and you're taking advantage of the timing, because some people don't listen, and that means that they miss the boat, or they miss the opportunities that could be coming towards them in that timing is everything, opportunity for you. I mean, that's my like little motto, mantra, whatever, for everybody. Timing is everything. So we live in such a world today too, that like everybody wants to compare what they're doing to their friends, or what your mom and dad think you should be doing. And the bottom line is, you should be doing what you should be doing, because it's your timing. Their timing is different, and all your friends' timing is different from you. Unless you're born on the same day with the same exact natal chart, you are, pretty much your timing is going to be a little offset from what somebody else's is. So one thing I teach people is, don't compare yourself to other people, because you have to know what your journey is supposed to be about.
Yeah, and I mean, it's truly written in the stars. I mean, I just launched a new book, which you told me.
Yes, congratulations. And I'm so happy you wrote it.
You told me I was going to write all these books, and I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, that was a timing opportunity for you to channel it all down, get it grounded. So you listened again. You listened again. It's congratulations.
And what's so interesting is that I do truly feel like I channeled it, because it was literally, I had the spark of inspiration. I need to write about this. And I sat down and I wrote it in 2 weeks, and then it was up. Like it was boom, 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 boom. And it was done.
As many books often come for people, especially if they're, paying attention to, knowing, oh my God, I've got all this stuff. But when they go, and it does, and it flows, and it floods right out of you. So that's the wonderful time to do it. Don't edit while you go, and leave that for the professionals.
Well, I have to say, I think it's one of the best things I've ever written.
Yeah.
One of the I'm so proud of it. It's one of the most proud things I've ever created. It turned out really well, but it was like, it was just crazy because I got the idea. I sat down, I wrote it, it was done, and it was like boom, boom, boom. And literally, like my coach, which I have a weekly or a monthly call with her, and she said, now wait a minute, last month when we spoke, there was no book, there was no mention of a book, we didn't talk about a book, and now there's a book and it's already out.
Well, you work fast, so.
Well, and it was funny because I actually told her, I said, well, if I was talking to my astrologer, I guarantee you it was in the stars.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I remember that when I was like, you got a book in you, it's going to come out. Sorry. You were like, no, no, no. But yeah.
Well, and it's just funny because when the first one came out, you had said there's multiple books, and I was like, no, there is not.
Oh no, I'm not doing this again.
I'm never doing this again.
Yeah,
and I was like, I'm going to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's one of the most fascinating things about what you do as an astrologer is it is this idea of listening to those inspirations that you get, the inklings that you get, and honoring them and kind of flowing with them. Because if you don't, you're kind of banging your head up against the wall.
Yep.
Going right, and there's a reason. So for those who have maybe never had an astrology reading or don't really necessarily know what it is that we're talking about, what's like the quick dirty version of what exactly this astrology stuff is and what a reading looks like for someone?
Well, most people are very familiar with what a horoscope is, of course, which is, those things I was attracted to when I was 7 in the newspaper. Everybody seems to know their sun sign. Most people got a gauge on that. They know they're the Leo, the Scorpio, the Aquarius, whoever you are. And, they're idly curious to read that horoscope. But astrology is so much more in-depth and detailed oriented than what that little blurb in the newspaper on a daily basis may be able to share with you. And basically, if you have ever been curious to get a chart done, first thing we want to know is what time are you born? And that's going to set up your map. And astrology really is it becomes not only a map for your life, for what are you good at, where are your weaknesses, health things maybe you should be aware of, things maybe you shouldn't overindulge in, things that you should, things to eat that will fortify your body, make you healthy and strong. What's your personality like? What are your emotions? All these things. Who are you best paired up with in a romantic relationship? All of these things, your career, vocation, so on and so forth. All of these things can be seen by the map that we get on the day that you were born, determined with the time and the place, of course. And then this map becomes a timeline as well, so that it will basically be put in the middle. And then because the planets are always in forward motion, they're always, the transits of the planets in the here and now are always moving in your life. So basically what's behind me here is a blank astrology wheel. And, this is really what it is. It's 12 pieces, which represent all of the 12 signs. Each of them occupy 30 degrees of space. And transits move this way. So when we're looking at your life, we're looking at how does this map look for you personally? And then the outside is any here and now we want to look at. Do you want to look at 10 years ago? Do you want to look at 10 years from now? The moment right now? Whatever you want to do. So we can always see why influences and certain decisions you should be making, so on and so forth, are happening in your life. And that's a nutshell. It helps us to align our peace of mind. There's always changing times in our life. This will never go away. So we want to go with the flow and make the right decisions at the right time in our life. And that's, again, when we listen, we tend to do that. But when we choose to not listen, we don't get the results that we want. 9 times.
I think that's what's so fascinating about it is that it really coincides with what's going on in your life, and maybe things that you're contemplating, or inspirations that you've had, or ideas that have, that have come up, and it like starts as a whisper, and then it's a conversation, and it's quite loud, and it's like you're ignoring it because it's time, you're supposed to do it. And so I think what's so uncanny is, like I said earlier, I will be thinking of doing something, or I have the inspiration, or I'm starting to put together something, and then I talk with you, and you're like, oh, no, it's going to happen in October, or yes, you should do that. And just how it all lines up. So one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on is you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, and I was complaining about the past retrograde. Oh my God.
You and everyone else, yes.
I got to tell you, I usually skate through them. I don't have a problem with them. Now, I'm not signing any major contracts. I'm not doing anything because I know, but for the most part, we're not bothered at all. And this last one, we had audios that disappeared, emails that disappeared, we had contracts that were, falling apart, that weren't even done during the time. Computers were not working. We had one.
That is classic MRX energy. MRX is the Mercury Retrograde abbreviation. So yes.
And just people just being on edge and dealing, with expectations that were unreasonable. And I was like, oh my God, like I just need to go take a nap until this is over with. Like it was so intense.
And
so the next one coming in was going to be even more. I was like, oh my gosh, like we need to. So first and foremost,
we need to talk.
For those who are listening today that have no idea what we're talking about, tell us what a Mercury retrograde is and what it typically affects, basically the things I was just talking about, and then what's going on this summer.
Yes. So all planets do this thing called retrograde. And all of them, from Mercury, and the moon does it too in its own way, but it's not called a retrograde. It's called moon void, of course. Another great timing is everything tip you need to know to follow to do any business in your life successfully. But retrograde happens with all the planets. So Mercury all the way on out to Pluto all have a retrograde cycle. The outer planets do it for up to 5 months at a time. But the inner ones, like Mars, Venus, and Mr. Mercury, do it more periodically, with Mercury being the most frequent. We have a Mercury retrograde about every 3 to 4 months. And Mercury is the one planet that guides communication, thinking, mentality, electricity, movement of any kind on this planet. So, and because its proximity to the Earth is so close, this is why when he goes retrograde, it causes all this, like what you talked about before, all these like weird things technology-wise, missing things, miscommunications, expectations being totally off kilter. All of these things are awry when Mercury is retrograde. However, there is a benefit to this cycle. And retrogrades are set up for us every 3 to 4 months, so that we as humans allow ourselves the time to reflect, to review, to recharge, reboot, retreat. You get the picture. If we ignore this and we try to put the foot on the gas and move forward and sign contracts and place things into being, initiate everything, they are all riddled in some form of error. One of the biggest things about Mercury retrograde is that human error is the highest under it than any other time of the year. So it's a time where if we spend the time in re-examining what already exists, we're going to get the best result. So we got to go back. It already has to be in motion in our life in order to be able to utilize the energy of Mercury retrograde to our benefit, which is the review and the redo part. If we're trying to initiate, we're just going to be, banging your head up against the wall. So it's not a time for forward motion, but it's a time for kind of I always use this analogy, take your foot off the gas, throw the car in neutral, and tap on your brakes for the 3 weeks. And that seems like a long time to ask anybody. Well, gee, for 3 weeks of my life, I can't do anything. Well, you can do certain things, but you shouldn't be doing, the list of things that Mercury Retrograde advises. If you don't do these, you'll be fine. But a lot of people have not a clue that it's Mercury retrograde, so they end up, you watch people around you just, cascading in frustration. And it's, that's why I developed Mastering Mercury Retrograde, because I got tired of people misunderstanding the cycle for the benefits that it actually has. So that's what we need to, be aware of, is it sits in our life for a reason. The hours, I love this little fact about it, the hours that Mercury retrogrades in one calendar year's time, if you take every 3 to 4 months it happens, for the 3 weeks it happens every time, it equivalates the amount of hours we sleep in a calendar year. It's kind of an interesting, comparison, because it's meant to be a rest period. We all need that. What would happen if we never slept every day? And of course, a lot of people aren't sleeping well lately anyway. But, if you think of Mercury retrograde like rest periods, then you're going to work with it super easy instead of fighting what it is. And you've got to go with the changes however they show up whenever it's Mercury retrograde. So
I'm curious then, I know this just because I know you and we've talked about this, but what are some good tasks to do during a retrograde? Like you've told me it's a good time to bring out an old, like a book that I was writing on, like maybe an old manuscript, or revisit some old things, or maybe start putting together a course, or kind of like that creative zone of building and contemplating and basically resurfacing old ideas.
Exactly.
That what it's
great word choice, resurfacing what already exists. And that is for an artist, Mercury retrograde is a fantastic time. Maybe not to paint the brand new painting or something, or write something completely brand new, but it's the best time to go back and revise, do those revisions, dig out something unfinished that you started perhaps, and you kind of like threw it up on the shelf and it's collected a little dust. The energy of the Mercury retrograde under that reviewing and researching, any of those things, wonderful way to spend the time, because you're really going to be getting the best benefit out of that. And often what gets recreated under Mercury retrograde is so brilliant. And you couldn't have even possibly have done that even when, you had another opportunity to do so. So that's like one of the, again, artists are fantastic under the cycle, as long as you're going back to fix something that's already, again, it's been established on some level. Like I noticed, like, it's like an odd example, but like the last retrograde, the show Roseanne came back on the air, which of course had been on hiatus for 20 years,
Yeah.
And they brought it back, and because it already existed, and it's actually doing quite well from what I've heard. But that was a revival, and now that works. They launched it under Mercury retrograde, and voila, it works. But if someone wants to let out something brandy new under Mercury retrograde, that I would say you're going to have, it's going to have to go back and be fixed. It's going to be in error on some level. So, or, it's just not what you wanted it to be. There's going to be things to fix.
So it's really about paying attention to when those times of year are, and when the retrograde is coming up, and just really thinking about, like, I'm really paranoid about, we don't sign any contracts. If we have a new client that comes in, we actually let them know, hey, it's a retrograde. We're not signing it until this date. And like,
Yeah. And it's great because you can work with the client and kind of get their ideas, and you can do the research with the client, but yes, don't make the agreement that this is a go until the retrograde lifts. Yeah. That's a good rule of thumb. Yeah. Well, sometimes we all have to do that. We're all humans.
So I'm curious, like you said when we were talking, that it's definitely going to be a turbulent one coming up this summer.
Yes.
So give us some details about what this looks like, and how, what we should expect, but also how we should anticipate and prepare for it in a way that gives us as much ease and grace as possible.
Well, now this summer is quite tricky because we won't only be contending with a Mercury retrograde when it does. And the next one, the one that we just had was March 22nd through April 15th. So those weeks, if you can think back, anyone in the audience watching, if you can think back to those 3 weeks, just about a month ago, life seemed a little awry over that time, and that was due to the Mercury retrograde. The one coming up will begin July 26th. Now, previous to that initiating, we have another inner planet retrograde that will be in effect already for a month at that time, and that is of Mars retrograde. It's the last inner planet retrograde that's very highly intense when it's in transit from above. And Mars, of course, due to the fact that its orbit is a lot larger than Mercury's, he retrogrades for 2 months.
Oh, goody.
And Mars basically, we switch energy when we're looking at Mars in comparison to Mercury. Both of them are planets of movement, planets of action, happening, and change. But Mars is more of a, take what the energy of a Mercury retrograde and a Mars retrograde is 10 times the intensity. So from June 26th until August 27th, you're going to have the Mars retrograde in effect. So that's going to be intense. That also advises, just like Mercury, don't start a lot of new things, or if anything that you can help. And I know it's hard to say, oh my God, over the summer I can't do anything. You could try. But the Mars retrograde will not, it'll be very tricky to make action happen with it that will also not be riddled in, it'll be, I want to say, placed in the wrong motivation, the wrong desire, which is also what Mars rules, is our motivation, our ability to take action in our life. Mars is a very penetrating, let's go. Let's not hold off on anything. Mars is very direct. Tell it like it is. Mars often requires our courage on some level. So, and because he's very penetrating and aggressive, he boils up the anger from time to time. So let's just say the tensions this summer will also, and you'll see this collectively around the world, and it won't just be what your personal story will be is by taking a look at that natal chart and figuring where all these retrogrades are going to be happening for me personally. But the world is going to be a little, let's just put it this way, irritable this summer. And we're already sort of getting a clue of, we already know it's intense out there anyway, but the show will get more amplified, especially by the time the end of June gets here. So that'll be happening. And then Mercury starts retrograde on July 26th. That will conclude on the 19th of August. So the whole Mercury retrograde is wrapped up and included in the Mars retrograde. Then we have an eclipse season. So we have a solar eclipse July 12th. We have a lunar eclipse July 27th, the day after Mercury turns retrograde, that will conjunct the Mars retrograde. I will say the 2 weeks in August, July 27th through August 11th, I don't care what you're doing for the future. I would cancel your plans. And I'm not saying if you're on vacation, that's cool. But if you're going to launch something over that time, good luck with that. You're going to sign something into being, good luck with that. That will be because you're getting a lunar eclipse, which is going to come on a full moon. The full moon also asks us to reflect and chill out for, on a monthly basis. We get waxing and waning phases that balance our month out all the time. That time frame, July 27th through August 11th, will be the most intense weeks of this summer, bar none, hands down. So that you want to really watch what you're doing. Again, with the Mercury going on in combination with the Mars, accidents are so apt to happen. The biggest rule of thumb is take your time, utilize your patience. The quicker you go, the behinder you're going to get under this kind of energy. It is, and I love your expression. You always use the word putter around. It's going to be like the best time to putter around. It just sort of, let the flow of whatever's showing up be. And move with it like you're just rocking on the boat on the sea, and go with the waves. Don't fight much, because if you do, you could have a lot of fire on your hands. Let's just put it that way.
So I'm curious, it sounds like basically from the maybe middle of July to basically the end of August is where the majority of this intensity is coming from. Like I was thinking, I have a business conference in San Diego that I'm already set. It's already set up to go,
Mm-hmm.
but it's from August 11th to August 14th. So is this type of intensity going to screw up travel or is it just more?
Yes, of course. That's a big rule of thumb under Mercury. The Mercury retrograde alone is that travel gets upset. So your plane may be delayed, an hour, 2 hours, who knows. You can't get an Uber taxi, those types of things. Miscommunications happen across the board when it's Mercury retrograde, but anything relating to travel, movement of any kind. Cars break down easier under Mercury retrograde. And Mars also rules things that move on some level mechanically. So you'll notice it's very intense with those types of things. And Mars is also a planet of explosion. So there could be a lot of very loud things happening in the world, to kind of put it politely, when it comes to fire and things that move on that level. So we need to be very cautious about that as well. It's going to be a very strong time to really have your awareness and your mindfulness. What is going on in the world? Be aware. Don't be fearful, but be aware of what's happening. And when the changes show up, the delays show up, the rerouting shows up, because it naturally will. And when we get all annoyed and the more you do that, the more aggravated you're going to get. So it's like, you can just sort of go, Mercury, Mars retrograde. Okay, I got to do this now. And kind of just surrender to the fact that you've got to go differently than you originally intended. If you do that, you'll do well. Yeah.
When it comes to this, it's funny because the last 2 summers we've had a retrograde at some point during the summer.
Yes, they've shown up the last couple summers.
And
we get it again next summer too, so
Yeah, and what's interesting is that both seasons our air conditioner has broken under the retrograde.
You see,
So
Good example. Another good example.
But I think that the idea of puttering is a great way to
putter your heart, putter to your heart's content.
Putter and surrender. I would say the last 2 Christmases have also been
yes, you're right. The last couple have been the same. This year we're going to get spared, thank God.
But the last 2, David and I traveled to New York, and we had travel delays, but we went into it knowing that we were going to likely be delayed or flights might be canceled. And so we traveled, knowing this. We had our laptops, we had, movies, we had downloads that we had. I had downloaded podcasts. Like, we were prepared and ready and so we just puttered, like just went with the flow, and it was absolutely fine. Like,
and and again, because you listened, you knew what was going to be going on, and people around you. I mean, if you really watch people who are, don't have this information, which is unfortunate for them. And that's kind of my mission, is to really educate this planet about how to work with the Mercury retrograde and not fight it. I watch people constantly. I'm like, they get all like, I watch posts on Facebook on the Mercury retrograde, and people are just flying off and sputtering away. And I'm just like, but if you just understood, So when you're well prepared and that's a big Mercury retrograde rule of thumb, is have your backup plan. So that was fantastic that you had all of that stuff. You could totally be puttering in an airport and be entertained. It's great.
Yeah, David did editing. I did some editing and had podcasts and videos, and like, we were totally fine because we had everything with us and we had brought all of our work with us. So I was able to do feng shui stuff, and we were totally prepared, but you could see the elevation
of people angst and upset.
And not being prepared. And there was one guy last season, he was on his cell phone, and like, his face looked like it was going to explode because he was yelling so loud into the phone. Like, he was so upset. But that's what you see. So during this time period, what are a couple of tips other than surrender and go with the flow? Are there certain things that people could be working on, or what you would recommend as an astrologer of just kind of how to do this with grace?
Yes, and I have coined it the summer of surrender. And I know that may sound harsh to people, but surrendering is not a negative thing. I know in some languages it kind of is translated that way, but surrender to me is also the theme of this entire year. Of this, we're in a master number 11, 2 vibrating year. It's very emotional. It's lunar guided. And it's asking us to surrender to healing, surrender to what it is that we need to do to kind of unite the divide in our life. Like, because let's face it, we are all disconnected on some level. Some people, I think, way more than others. So for me, this summer, to really take advantage of this energy is to allow yourself to feel these things, allow yourself to reflect, and give yourself the space and not fight the fact that this needs to happen. And, things that you can work on, your own inner work. Now, of course, the other tip you do need is, where is this happening in your chart? So you got to know your astrology chart to know how to personalize the Mercury retrograde in your life. Because depending on the area of your life it's happening, that's where you really want to focus your reflection. And of course, because this Mars retrograde and the Mercury retrograde are actually going to be happening in opposite signs. So there's going to be one pole over here and one pole over here. So there's a rebalancing and an alignment that wants to be happening, especially once that Mercury kicks into gear. And then, of course, you've got the lunar eclipse conjuncting the Mars retrograde. So it's just a whole reflection fest. That's what the end of July, especially through early August, or almost mid-August, is all about. It's just about reflection. If you're doing anything else but reflecting in wherever you're supposed to be reflecting in your life, then you're probably missing the boat.
Well, I would say that it's definitely a time of meditation and inner work.
Yeah, meditation, whatever it is, and of course, a lot of people, I don't know how to meditate. I can't meditate. You could take a walk and meditate. You can go garden and meditate. You could wash the dishes and meditate. Some people folding laundry is meditation. Cleaning the house is meditation. So fear the fact that, oh, I gotta sit down and empty my brain cells, and there are great ways to meditate. You can meditate by just knowing how to focus on your breath and having a mantra: inhale love and exhale pain, or whatever it is that you need to personally work on, because that's a different story for everybody. Yoga is meditation. There's many ways that we can choose to invite reflection and invite relaxation into our life. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I've got to become a guru this summer.
Well, I will say on the meditation note, podcast number 28 and 29 are both with meditation experts Sade Simone and Emily Fletcher. So I would recommend that people go back and listen to those. And I also have a free ebook on my website right now on meditation, on just how to calm your shit down.
Yeah. I encourage anyone who thinks they can't meditate to try exactly what you just suggested. Like, check out these other podcasts and, look around. There are a lot of things out there. It is not rocket science to meditate, but I think a lot of people have a lot of fear about it because they just think, oh, I can't do it. And of course, if you tell yourself you can't do something, well, guess what? You're getting in your own way before you should have to.
I think a lot of people are fidgety. They have a lot of pent up energy, and they are very actionary. And I feel like that's really a part of our culture, that we're not productive if we're not actionary, and we're not.
Yes, if we're not busy, we're not productive. Oh God, that's where Mercury is going to tell you you're silly for constantly being active, and that is why I retrograde every few months, so that you humans will decide to slow down.
Yeah,
because you need to do it.
I was going to say that's what makes this so perfect, is it kind of forces you to go inward and to reflect and surrender. And it truly is the summer of surrender. So we've decided we're just going to take the summer off and just not work.
That's basically what I'm doing. I've done that for the last 2 summers anyway, and it's worked out just fine. So it's been
always
fantastic.
Go over to Europe. So but we are working on a course right now. We're working on a feng shui course that we're going to launch this fall. So I think that, having a solid 6-7 weeks to really focus on what that looks like and what needs to be in it, and how it's going to unfold.
That's perfect, because you've already got it. You've got the whole idea established. It exists, and then you're gonna like tweak that wonderfully, and let her loose.
Yeah,
let her loose in September.
The whole outline is done. We just have not had the time to put it all together, and so this sounds like the perfect time to work on a course.
It absolutely is. It is. You'll come up with like even more brilliant ideas than you think you already have for it, and that's what'll be working with that retrograde to its advantage. So again, congratulations. I'm going to give you advanced congratulations, and we'll talk more in the fall about how it all went, but I think it's going to be good.
Well, Sharita, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I think that this is going to be really beneficial for helping people navigate the waters of retrograde. And I think that for those who don't or are not aware of it, to have a greater understanding of why shit is going wrong, it allows you to, get to this idea of puttering and being okay with it.
Absolutely.
But if people are interested in finding out how the Mercury retrograde is going to affect them and their chart, how do they find you? How do they get in touch with you so that they can get a reading?
Well, there's 2 avenues. You can reach me, of course, anytime at sharitastar.com. That's my main website. And I also have the Mastering Mercury Retrograde program, which I will be releasing in another 2 weeks, the workshop for the summer. To tell you how to navigate it all. And then if you want a personal session, that's at masteringmercuryretrograde.com. But you can set up a personal appointment, just like hop on my site, and Sharita at sharitastar.com. That's it.
So, and we will also have, if you guys go to our website, gatesinteriordesign.com, we will have Sharita's information on there with both of those links so that you can find her. Do keep in mind that she does go on vacation at the end of summer, so she will not be available.
Well, actually, my last appointments in the States will be at the end of June. So you definitely want to get, and because this is an ongoing thing for July and August, you want to get yourself informed by mid-June at the latest. So yeah, don't waste your time.
Don't waste
Take the
time.
opportunity.
If you are interested in doing this. Thank you, Sharita, for coming on today.
Thank you so much. And thank you to your audience and your listeners. And this has been an honor and a pleasure. So I really hope everyone has a peaceful summer, because you can. As long as reflection is part of your practice, you're going to do very well with it.